Welcome to Wine Country at Work. I'm Ralph de Amicis, and today we're going to be talking with Nicole Marino about her remarkable calendar. So Nicole, you started working on this last December?
I did. I started last December, and that was the first shoot that we did that kind of launched the calendar off.
It's remarkable because what's the title of the calendar?
So it's called Napa Valley's Most Decadent Male Winemakers. We had to use the word decadent in it because it's a wine descriptor.
Yes.
So we thought it'd be very fitting to use in this calendar.
And it's interesting because you had to select because there's hundreds of winemakers here.
There is, yeah. It was a really tough selection. So what I did was I did a Facebook poll. And I asked some of my, I think I have almost 2,000 friends on Facebook. And I said, who would you vote for? I know who I kind of wanted to have in the calendar, but it was really up to them, and I tallied up the votes.
Oh.
And so a majority of the top picks got in the calendar.
That was very logical.
It was. It made sense because it was what the majority wanted and the public wanted.
Interesting, because they are a tight-knit community.
Yes,
and
very much so.
Everyone knows everybody.
Very much so. Everyone helps each other out, so it was really nice to kind of have people refer people, even winemakers referred other winemakers as well. It's really nice to have that kind of, that unison that we represent here in the Valley.
People don't realize how much cooperation goes on. Someone will have, break a piece of equipment during crush and call a friend up and they'll run over with a piece of equipment to help them out.
Right. I find that to be so amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you think of other industries and you think how cutthroat it is and how people really don't share and they're a little more competitive. And I think really in our wine industry, especially in the Valley, people are so forthcoming and giving and sharing like, oh, I'll help you out. Let me stop what I'm doing and help you out. Or even drive you to where you need to be, and so it's amazing.
Well, it's that combination of, farm country, which has always been a cooperative venture, that's the nature of farming, but it's also hospitality mixed together, and it adds that extra little zinger because people really are amazingly cooperative. I remember during the quake how much people helped each other out without thinking twice about it. Yeah,
and it was amazing to see on each shoot that I did. Everybody stepped up. The winemaker said, let me help you move this gear. Let me, they're so in hospitality mode. And they would actually literally help me with props or come up with ideas and really drive the focus of a lot of the shoots. So it was really nice to see and nice to work with them.
Well, it's especially interesting because winemakers normally are not involved on the hospitality side so much. I mean, when they get up to the higher level, when they're the senior winemaker, then that's their main job is going out to dinner with people and selling wine. But these folks, these are younger men, and they're the ones they're up to here in juice.
Exactly.
And they think very much three-dimensionally because they're thinking with tanks and they're thinking about how it's going to develop over a period of time. It's very much what you have to do as a photographer.
It is, and it's interesting you say that because it is very dynamic in that way. You have to get creative with what you're doing and working with. Lighting's changing as a photographer. The props are changing. Things that you thought might work out no longer work out because of lighting or situation. And I think that's really true. With these winemakers, they got creative. I had one winemaker in particular who said, let's just lift some barrels up. So he's lifting barrels over his head and saying, will this work? And we're trying out that shot. It didn't end up working for the shot, but it was great to kind of see, him being willing to kind of work and roll with things.
Yeah, because it's a very physical art, what they do.
It is.
It takes some muscles.
It is, and that is definitely visible in the calendar. You see muscles for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a bunch of good-looking guys. I noticed that. It's also interesting, too, the quality of the light. This is an area that's famous for the quality of light. How did you deal with that? Did you shoot early in the day, late in the day? Did you...
Right. It's one of my earliest photo shoots that we did. We got there at 4 a.m. and we started setting up at 5. It was the December shoot, so we kind of waited for the light to be perfect. And even in December, and I remember that specific moment when the sky actually turned bright pink, and we kind of transitioned into capturing that moment. It was unbelievable. So that was the earliest shoot. We did a really late shoot where the sun was setting. It was absolutely gorgeous, and you'll see that in, I believe it's Mr. February or March.
Oh.
The sun is setting, and the mustard fields are, in bloom.
Oh, yeah. I love the mustard. Now, how many shoots did you do a month? Did they come, in groups, or?
Well, I have to confess, my goal was to do one a month.
Right.
And which is very manageable, but as much as I'm doing so many other things and other shoots, we did skip about 2 to 3 months. And in those shoots, I had to make up for it and do, I think it was 3 in a month. And we did a lot of indoor shoots because what I wanted to really make sure that I was replicating is what's happening in the vineyard during that month is what we're capturing.
Oh.
So in December, you were seeing what it was in December in the vineyards at that moment. And in January and February, and so everything that you would do in those months, like pruning and all of that, was what we had transpire in the calendar.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, it's a very sequential business. You know, they used to say that you had to go into the vineyards 5 times a year. Not around here.
Right.
These are the ultra premium grapes. You have to go in a dozen times a year, and the winemakers are very, involved in the growing as well. They're keeping track of what those plants are doing. So, the only time they get a little bit of a break is after everything's in the barrels.
Exactly. They're really babying it and really watching the process in different ways, but at the same time, I think that they're so used to their property and I mean, they're really people who have been in the industry for quite some time. So the winemakers you'll see in this calendar are what represent and make up this valley and really are legends, really. And they really represent what we're tasting on a daily basis. I mean, unbelievable wines.
I hope they hear this show because that's how I'd love to be described. Now, who's in the calendar?
So we've got Gerrit Aanveld. Gerrit is one of the winemakers who's on the younger side. He's the next generationer, we call him. And he's really kind of hit the pavement running and made a name for himself in the valley. One of the props that we used, it's kind of funny how this all came about because there was a tractor on the property and then there was a very old wagon. And I don't think he even realized that we could use the wagon. The theme is the 1800s. And there was a wagon on the property that dated back at least in the 1800s. So we used that for the shot.
Yeah, most people don't realize that in the 1800s there were 150 wineries here.
Yeah, and that's amazing because that was something that I learned later in the wine industry after being here for a while.
And who else do we have?
And we've got for February,
I like
Brennan.
that one.
Yes, Brendan DeLoos of ZD Winery. He's the winemaker, and also his family owns the winery. And this is what I was telling you about with the sun setting and the mustard fields, and that's what you would see in February. We've kind of changed a little bit over the years as far as what's happening in each season due to climate changes, but for the most part, that's what you would see in February.
Now, he's 3rd generation, isn't he?
He is. His grandfather started the winery.
Right, exactly.
So there's a lot of history there. He's actually wearing his grandfather's hat and his grandfather's belt and things, and so that was something I really tried to play true with.
That.
Yeah, it made such a difference. I told each of the winemakers, can you bring any props? Can you bring anything to the table that is the history of the winery? Because it makes for a better story. So it's very authentic in each shot.
And ZD is one of the very well-known organic wineries.
Yes,
they are. Very much since its inception, I believe.
Yes, and they've also gone solar. So there's many things. Yes.
Well, they had been a technological family before that. They loved the engineering.
Exactly. There's a lot of history there.
And who do we have in March?
For March, we've got David Grega. And he makes wines for Carlotta Wines and Broken Arrow. And he's got an old pipe in his mouth.
Yes. In front of the winery door.
Yes, exactly. So we've got, and they needed a lot of help with the wardrobe, but some of them actually had some inkling on what to do, and so I helped guide them. But you know what? They drove the direction in some ways. I left it up to them. I gave them some insight and some photos to kind of emulate, and they really took off with it.
Well, they did have a life before they became a winemaker.
Yes.
I mean, they didn't know how to dress before they got to the point where it was a lot easier to just dress for work.
Right,
so.
Well, they had to dress for the 1800s, and like, what on earth do I have in my wardrobe for the 1800s? So.
What made you think of that as a theme?
I'm just like the authenticity of it, and I like the authenticness of something of a different era, and there's something about the winemakers in and of themselves and what they do on a daily basis, and I just thought it'd be fun to get really kind of down home with what would have happened way back when and what it would have looked like, and it just came to mind. So
well, authentic's the perfect word because truly great wines, that's the nature. They're very authentic. They're very truthful. They're very true to where they come from. When you were saying about how they're so connected to their land, it's a symbiotic relationship, and that the land really has to speak through the wine. It's their job to translate it.
It really does. And these winemakers are feeling inspiration from the land, inspiration from what's happening in the vineyards. So you can tell, you can feel the aura of it when you see this calendar.
So who's April?
April's Rudy Zudima, Zudima Wines.
Where's Zudima Wines? I recognize them.
You know, way up on, I believe that it is up in St. Helena.
Oh,
yes.
Tucked away.
Yes.
Okay. I like the fact that you have the red band on the barrel.
Yes.
And this is the April, the Aries.
Exactly.
The Aries calendar, which is symbolized by the red buds coming out. Yeah.
Yes.
And he brought his dog.
And he brought his dog, yes. So we even got him to kind of be in the photo. And the dog, you know, a lot of these winemakers have winery dogs.
Yes.
And so it's very fitting that the dog naturally poses for the photos and is actually looking.
Yeah, dogs play a big role here.
Yes.
You know, they keep the coyotes away, they keep the gophers down.
They do.
They watch out over everything. And they're the most relaxed dogs you've ever seen.
Oh, they are. They're very well-mannered.
You know, I mean, for us, we're both from the East Coast. We're used to dogs who are very stressed.
Right.
They're like so relaxed.
It kind of represents the people here, I think, as well.
That's
Very
true.
relaxed people.
That's true.
They take after their owners.
That's true.
And we've got Brian Page from May. And
yes.
he's got Page Cellars as well as Revolver Wines here in
yes,
Napa.
Yes.
And I will share a little joke and a story about how this went down. You know, he is a friend of mine. A lot of these winemakers are friends of mine,
right.
but Brian in particular. And I said, okay, try to make that muscle pop a little bit more.
Okay.
And this muscle was not
yes.
like that before I said that, and then it just
yes.
kind of popped. And so
Yeah,
it's now flexed.
He's someone who lifts stuff, yes.
He does.
Yeah, oh, now he's doing the bottling. Oh, yes, that will give you muscles.
Right, and this is an old-fashioned bottler.
Yes.
So we brought that in.
Many times I've told people about, you know, why we have our gravity-fed wineries, because otherwise the 1800s, you had to use hand pumps.
Right.
It took a lot of muscle.
Oh,
A lot
absolutely.
easier to make the wine upstairs and just open the valves up.
Absolutely. And for June, we have Ryan Hill of Hill Family Wines.
Oh, yes.
And he poses very well. As you can tell, most of these winemakers
Yes.
look great in front of the camera.
Yeah.
So every shot was a good one. We shot this on the property of his godfather, who lives also in Yountville. And we brought in old wagons, old wine jugs. Fruit plays a really big role in their family. They did a lot of farming back in the day. And so we have some overturned fruit barrels and things like that.
And I think his father manages like a dozen different properties, as I recall.
He does, yes. They're very...
In fact, he grows snails for the French laundry, I believe.
Oh, that's amazing. I did not know that.
That's what I've been told.
Oh, wow.
They have to come from someplace, I guess.
More reason to go and visit the French Laundry.
Exactly. You know, and it's nice, too, because it is true that people who grow up in Napa tend to be very good looking. Have you ever noticed that?
They do. The wine is doing something to these
Something
people.
in the water and the air or something, but it's very true.
So. It is true. And, you know, like you said, people are relaxed, and that shines through with people's makeup and what they give off as a vibe. So.
Exactly. What time of the day did you shoot that one?
This was, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was about 2 o'clock. We had a tree that really worked out perfectly to prevent that direct sun from coming in.
That's a beautiful shot.
It is, thank you.
He glows.
He does.
Even the fruit glows. Everything, and the water in the jug just sparkles, and yet there's no glare on them.
Yes,
It's a beautiful shot.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it turned out very well. I'm very pleased with the way it turned out. And then we've got Aaron Pott, and he's got another dog, his friendly little friend here, Timmy Tiptoes.
Yeah, very well-known winemaker.
Yes,
very
he is.
respected, yeah.
He's very respected.
I like the shot, too, with the black and white.
Yeah, you know, I kind of went with what I was feeling. Some of the photos just kind of spoke that they needed to be black and white, and some of them needed to be color. And with this one, it just was speaking volumes that it needed to be black and white. And he had that outfit in his possession already. So.
Well, I love it because, you know, we think of the 1800s in this area as being very agricultural, but it was also an entrepreneurial area. Remember, this area Napa was established by sea captains who came up on the Napa River.
Okay,
they had dash and flair. You know, some of the first owners up here, Grisby, for instance, was a sea captain, and they had style. And they were wealthy people, and they were making wine and became very successful. So they probably had a nice wardrobe tucked away someplace.
I'm sure we could find more props if we really started digging somewhere.
This was perfect. This was perfect.
It's amazing.
I like that. I like it with the big oak tanks.
Yes,
they're starting to make a big resurgence. Yeah.
I think so as well. And then we've got Fred and Andy Schwager. So Fred is Andy's dad.
Yes.
And that was really amazing and a great thing to have. He's such a legend in the Valley, both of them. But to have his dad in the photo really, I hadn't thought of it beforehand. And then he said, "Do you want my dad in the photo?" I said, "Of course." I didn't know his involvement was still significant. And it was great to have the both of them, and you can tell that there's a lot of props that are antiques from the winery as well.
And they've been growers here for so long. Yeah. I mean, I think back to the 1800s, as I recall. I'm not sure, but I know they've, down in the Stag's Leap district, They're essential to that area.
And their property is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
We shot this around August when the leaves were all changing. And it was actually, I think it was raining that day.
What time of the day was this?
This was the very end of the day.
Yeah, it looks like that late.
It was getting dark, and so.
I love it.
But it's just got a different feel, and it's so different from the other.
Well, even look at the straw bale. The straw bale is like glowing underneath him.
Right.
You know, and I love the fact that the great props with the old press and things. You sure they had it just tucked by the barn, because they never throw anything away around here.
They don't. I know, and that's what's so great about being able to dig up these antiques so easily. Yeah, it was kind of set back on the property, and they came up with the idea to use it, and I said, this is perfect.
Yeah, they don't throw stuff away.
And then we've got David Tate
for September. Where does he make wine?
And he is over at Barnett.
Oh.
And he has his own label, Tate Wines.
Yeah, those are some good wines.
And a gorgeous property.
And that's the Barnett property.
It
the
is.
hillside. I recognize those hillsides looking out over the valley.
It was a tough choice on where to shoot on the property because there were so many different angles and views, and everything was gorgeous.
But you had to find some shade for him because that is such a bright property.
You're right, it absolutely is.
Oh, just like glares.
It was.
And I see you got him tucked up against the building, very smart. With those beautiful set downs.
Oh yeah, isn't that amazing?
Gorgeous. That's a good shot. Yeah.
Thank you.
I tell you, when you can have the ambient light and then you can get people into shade, the quality of the light is just beautiful.
It's dramatic, and yes, and you know that firsthand. I mean, it just makes such a difference. There's no shadows on them, and you have more kind of seniority over the lighting, really.
The colors are so rich.
They are.
And really come through. I do see that when we're filming.
Yes.
Oh, this looks like fun.
Yeah, October. Mr. October is Niels Venge, who has been in the industry for quite some time for Saddleback Cellars, and his son is also in the industry. And, you know, he's a legend. He really is. So he was really funny about this. He said, I brought you my suspenders and my kerchief here so that we could actually pose. And I said, perfect, that's great. So these guys really thought this out.
Oh, yeah.
And this is an old box of something that was actually already in the winery from years past. It was one of the original boxes from the original winery.
An old lariat?
Yes. Yeah. And we've got actually a skull of an animal that was actually in the winery as well.
Well, people don't realize a lot, you know, especially in the generations before this, rodeo was a really big thing around here. They would have in fact, the biggest rodeo in the region was the Sonoma Rodeo, all the way down by the bay.
Oh, okay.
And it was actually a big training area for horses, but that was the big rodeo that everyone would come in for. And you know, a lot of the local winemaker families were really involved with, you know, lassoing cattle and things like that.
Wouldn't it be neat to be back there and be reliving that? I think it would be fun. I know there's croquet in the valley here that we still do at Meadowood, but and I will share a little secret. I didn't edit a lot of the backgrounds and a lot of the shots because I wanted to really show true with what was happening in the vineyards and the colors, but I moved the dog. The dog was on the other side of the photo for another shot that I captured, and I photoshopped him over here because it looks better.
You can't really tell. Where was this shot?
This was on Saddleback's property.
Oh, I thought I recognized it. Yeah, I've been there I've had his wines many times, but I've been to that property many, many times with clients.
And we staged every shot, but you can see the wagon wheel that was brought in, that antique wheel that we set back here.
You know, and that section right there in Oakville, you got it's a beautiful. It's just very rich with sunlight.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
But you really caught him beautifully.
And the great thing about while I was doing this calendar is, you know, leading up to it, checking out the lighting, I was taking other nature shots. So, I mean, I could do a whole book just on the nature scenes that I captured while I was waiting for the winemakers and preparing and checking out the lighting.
Do something while you're waiting.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so for Mr. November, it's Julianne Fayard with Azure Wines.
Oh.
And this is such a gorgeous property. Ironically, there's a backstory. I used to live on this property.
Oh.
And they sold it. The particular landlord sold it at the time, a couple years ago. And Julian and his wife bought the property. So when I came to do the shoot, I said, this looks very familiar.
That's funny.
And the history of that one, the particular property is unreal.
Really?
So, yeah. So everything, this barn is very old in itself.
Very, very obviously. Yeah, he looks like an interesting character. Where's he from
He
originally?
is. That's a good question, actually. I think he's from France.
It sounds like with Julien, it's spelled like that, the French spelling.
Yes, I think Julien is from France.
Yeah, he's got the French look.
Yes.
Interesting. Nice setup.
And then finally, Mr. December, who was shot last December, is Jason Moore of Modus Cellars.
Oh.
And It was a fun shoot. I wish I had some video. You should have been doing my video for me on the outtakes of what we were doing and laughing about.
Oh, I bet.
But this was a shot that was captured really early in the morning.
Oh, yeah. Look at that beautiful quality of light. Look at the haze coming in.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
The fog coming in.
And so for every shot I did, I wanted to have their wine bottles amongst the antique props.
Yeah.
And that was important for me. So he's got a couple bottles in here. One in particular actually looks antique.
Oh, yeah, with the little extra handle at the top,
Yes.
like the old amphora.
Yes.
I love that. That's beautiful. I love the overall setup, but the quality of the light is just beautiful.
Yeah, I was really proud of how he was during the shoot and the lighting and everything.
And also his expression is very much like the farmer philosopher.
It is, and thank you for noticing that, because I actually had to help them getting to character.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't want any smiles. I want you to pretend that you've had a hard day,
Right.
and you're sweating or you're exhausted, but you're also really pleased with the results, and you're ready to either go in and eat dinner, or you're ready to go and have a glass of wine and unwind. And you know what? I think it really was achieved. They got into character, and it really helped them.
Of course. I mean, after all, you're giving them instructions. How could they resist? Really.
Well, thank you.
It certainly helps.
But it does help, and it gets them to kind of feeling like they're not them. They don't have to be their exact self, and they can put on a little actor facade and get into the role.
And it's the process too, because they have to be so many different people to so many different situations in the process of being a winemaker. Sometimes you're the organizer. So much of the time you're out there walking the vineyard, maybe you're with the vineyard manager, and you've got to negotiate.
Exactly.
They want to do this because that's too much work, and you want them to do more work, and then they get to crush, and you've got all these people doing things, and you got to say to the guys, no, I don't want you to pick those 5 rows. They're not ready.
Right.
Those 5. But no, those 5.
Yeah, specifically letting them know.
And you're starting at 2 in the morning with these things. I mean, they have to play so many different roles, and yet there's so much thought that goes into it. Clients are amazed so many times when I'll tell them about what's involved in making wine and in growing. They say, I had no idea it was so complicated.
It's unbelievable what they do. I mean, I really would love to do a documentary just on the winemaking process. I mean, it really is unreal. And the thing that I wanted to really showcase is what they were thinking when they got into the industry. So I asked them to come up with a story or a couple sentences that inspire them to get into the wine industry. And I said, I don't want to see anything from your website, anything on your bottle. I want something original that really gets down home with what you were feeling and what inspired you. And so a lot of these quotes and things that I've showcased over the photos are authentically what drove them into the industry.
Oh, wow.
So it's great to see the behind the scenes of that.
Yeah, because after all, these are very intelligent, very hardworking people, and it's not like winemaking is the most profitable thing in the world. When you become the head winemaker, you can do very well, but it's a long climb to that.
What's that phrase? It takes $1 million to make $1 million, or something like that.
The way to make a small fortune in winemaking is to start with a large fortune.
Right.
Yeah, it's very true. It's because it's farming, and the profit margins are relatively slender. Every season is different. It's not like with beer. If you want to make more beer, you call up and they send you from the silo more grain over. When you're making wine, what's coming in? That's what you've got.
Absolutely.
And that's all you're getting. And if you made like 300 cases of the best wine you've ever made, that's all you're getting is 300 cases. Yes, and
it's scary in a way too, because you're at the whim of Mother Nature, and if you lose fruit or you get too much heat, and that's it.
Well, like this year, 2000, and this is the 2016 calendar. In 2015, the harvest was down about 30%. Everyone said, "Oh, it's because of the drought." No, it was because of the rain washing the pollen off of the flowers in the springtime.
Right.
It was just at the wrong time.
Right.
And it dropped the harvest by 30%.
It's interesting, which kind of helps in bring in, the quality of the wines. You're picking only the best fruit at that point, but you're losing a lot too.
Exactly,
So,
and they have to adapt.
They do. They really do. I got to hand it to them. And then a nature scene here that I took in Yountville.
Lovely.
And then a lot about the calendar, what we're thinking behind the scenes of the theme, the props, the quotes, and where I came up with that concept.
What made you decide to do this as partially a benefit for the Veterans Home?
I had a friend who was 99 when he passed away, and he just passed away last August. He actually kind of drove the inspiration where I wanted to give back to a charity, and automatically I thought of the veterans. He was such an amazing, amazing person with amazing stories, had lived a long life, but always had a smile on his face and a happy outlook on life. And I wanted to give back to the other veterans that had dedicated their lives to the country and done so much in their lives. And that's really what drove it. It kind of went hand in hand, the thought of the calendar in conjunction with also giving back to the veterans.
It's a very good goal. You know, people don't realize how much the Veterans Home and the tradition of the military in this area is really a significant influence.
It is, and I think if I remember correctly, the Veterans Home is one of the largest, I think, in the world. Yeah. They've got a lot of different programs happening there, and there's stories, you know, I don't feel like people take care of our elderly enough and spend time with them. A lot of these veterans and people living in assisted living don't have family any longer, and if they do have family, they live far away, and so they're not getting the attention and really the love that they need. And so I was blessed to have Tony in my life where I would see him every week. And he was more like a grandfather and a friend than just some person that I met at the Veterans Home. So it was a beautiful relationship for both him and myself.
Well, it's a fantastic project.
Thank you.
It's turned out beautifully. How can people find it?
You can go on my website. If you go to bigshotinwinecountry.com, you can visit. There's a link there at the top of the website, and you can click on it. It talks about the calendar, and you can purchase right from there.
So Big Shot?
bigshotinwinecountry.com.
Very good.
Yes.
Well, like I said, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. This has been a pleasure. Thank you.
It's been fun again. Well, thanks for joining us again at Wine Country at Work, and we'll see you next time.